From the Toronto Star, I'm Saba Eitizaz, and this matters.
Do I believe, and does the minister believe, April 6th, kids are going back to school? The kids won't be going back to school on April the 6th.
You heard Ontario Premier Doug Ford, kids. School is out.
School is out. Time to scream and shout. Let's get loud. I'm about to act out. School is out.
With the exception of frontline workers, pretty much every family around Canada and the world is in isolation due to COVID-19, faced with the prospect of spending months together at home. Many parents are experiencing more physical time with their children than they have ever had to. But let's face it, there are no awards for best quarantine parent, where currently the greatest struggle of our times might be how to keep your kid from popping up in the middle of your work Zoom meeting. More than 2 million children in Ontario will be e-schooling at home after the government announced yesterday that schools will remain closed till at least the 4th of May, and no one's really sure of when they might reopen again.
And in order to protect our children, I'm prepared to extend these closures even further if we have to.
There will be questions that come out, and hopefully more and more answers and resources will be made available. There are currently grade-by-grade guidelines for hours at homeschool that range from 5 hours a week depending on the grade level. But extra resources are needed and have been promised for children without access to computers, internet, even paper, or for children with special needs. Now, I mentioned this for perspective. Whether you are homeschooling your kids full-time or running Netflix 24/7, there is no right and wrong in these extraordinary times. Today, we're going to talk to an early childhood and education expert about how to keep your kids engaged and learning while staying sane. And we will also hear from a young mom of 4 very young children who has decided school is definitely not out at her house. We're talking now to Dr. Sejal Patel. She is Associate Professor of Early Childhood Studies at Ryerson University and a mom of 2 at home. She's also an expert on developmental psychology and education and an affiliate scientist at St. Michael's Hospital. Thanks for talking to us, Sejal.
My pleasure.
So it's not an easy time for parents or kids right now that school's out at least till May. What advice would you have for parents who are struggling with the situation?
So we are in unusual and unprecedented times, and families are facing unique challenges in these circumstances. So some families might be dealing with physical and or mental health challenges themselves. They might have concern for elderly and other family members and friends whom they can no longer see due to the necessary social distancing, as well as they're maybe dealing with job-related challenges. So, for example, working tirelessly in the front lines with fear of illness, maybe dealing with temporary layoff, reduced income, or even job loss. So some might be dealing with the challenge of working from home while juggling children at home, or even experiencing social isolation. So children in childcare or who are of school age are also adjusting to big changes in their regular weekday routines. They're no longer spending physical time with their educators or their family members who care for them, and they're not getting the same live socializing or playtime with their friends or classmates. So in terms of advice for parents who are struggling with this situation, I think there's a number of levels to this, and the first is to talk to our children. It's important to talk with our children about the situation, and speaking with children about the COVID-19 pandemic in a manner that's appropriate to the individual child's age, personality, and temperament is really important. For example, I told my preschoolers that there's a new virus going around which is making people sick, and that washing our hands while singing our ABC song and not touching our faces is a way to keep the sickness away.
You mentioned preschoolers, so you clearly have some personal experience with this as well. Do you think the struggle is real? A lot of parents are wondering if there is any right way to parent in this situation.
I don't think there's any one right way to parent in this situation. I think that no one-size solution will fit all families, that perhaps families can try to create routines and daily structure, but there needs to be room for flexibility. And we need to pay attention to what families' particular circumstances are. So, for example, thinking about whether your family is a single parent, two-parent, working from home, or Is there one working parent or both, a generational family? Thinking about how many children are at home. So I don't think there's one right way to parent or create routine, and no one size will fit all. However, I do believe strongly in the power of families in figuring out what will work best for their individual circumstances.
How do you see this situation panning out in the long term? Schools out till May for now, depending on where the situation progresses. Should parents be worried about their children falling behind or being unable to keep up with the next school year?
So in the long term, if school's definitely out for this school year, which it looks like it might be, I think my advice would be that we should take life one day at a time. In the long term, perhaps families will find that a particular routine or schedule works best for their children and for their particular circumstances. And if so, they should use it. I understand that maybe parents might be fearful that their children are falling behind, or they might be worried about their children not being able to keep up. But I guess my comment to that is that all of our children are in the same boat. And educators and our education system will be there to support families in getting back on track. And parents, perhaps just do what you can from home without creating undue stress for yourselves or for your children. And I can personally relate to this struggle. You know, the struggle is real, working from home while juggling children at home. So I guess, I try to see the opportunity in these difficulties to find the silver lining when possible. In my household, with my husband and I working from home and our twin preschoolers, we're trying to create a balance of physical activity, including indoor video-led yoga, time playing outside while avoiding playgrounds, and maintaining social distancing, doing indoor dance parties and more creative activities like arts and crafts, having the children help with cooking or baking, learning through practicing life skills, play, as well as through more structured activities while trying to monitor screen time. So on a given day, we're not adhering to the exact same routine or timings, with the exceptions of meals and sleep, which we're trying our best to keep consistent. However, we're using a somewhat predictable combination of types of activities and trying to follow our children's interests and lead when possible.
Any other advice for parents, Sejal, for themselves while they're going through this challenging time?
Parents and their well-being is also important. I think we're spending a lot of time thinking about the children and their academic success, but the pressures are really real, and it's okay if things don't go as planned. To be kind to yourself, take deep breaths, breaks, and practice self-care in a way that's meaningful and possible for the individual circumstance.
Thanks so much, Sejal. And I'm sure a lot of parents will be relieved to hear from an expert that there is no one way to do this.
You're welcome.
Like the good doctor said, no one size fits all. Some are just trying to help their family get through this together. Like my friend Ronnie. Now her teen is trying to launch a career in music.
COVID-19 is killing me, and I must confess I hate quarantine. I miss my friends, I'm losing my mind. Give me a sign. When the hell can I go outside?
Yeah, I relate to that on so many levels. Others have gone the other way. Hema Lozano is running a tight ship, or rather a makeshift school, in her basement. I have to find out how that's going. Hi, Hema. It seems like you've got your hands full these days, haven't you?
I certainly do. Although today is a little bit of an easier day. We're having a pajama party, dance party downstairs going on.
So day off from school today, courtesy of us, it seems.
Yes, they're very lucky. Otherwise, they would be sitting and doing their lessons as per norm, but they're having their snacks and they're well occupied while we're having this conversation.
Right. So it seems that school's out, but you've started a makeshift school in your basement. How does that work?
Well, when we got the emails and the information from the media about this COVID-19 situation, and it seemed like it wasn't going to be ending anytime soon, I was quite concerned about my children's education. So I have 4 little children. My oldest, he will be 7 in April. My daughter will be 5. My other son, he's 3. And I just also have a newborn. So my hands are quite full in that sense. But when I found out that school wouldn't be going back to the norm after the March break, I thought, okay, well, I cannot allow for my children's education to slip. So I started formulating this makeshift school in my head and looking up on the Ontario website about what the curriculum is, and also being so active in his school, in my son's school, as I was previously, I knew where they had left off. So I decided to take that upon myself to educate them.
So you mentioned this Ontario website and you sort of followed the curriculum off of that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, just in case other parents want to utilize that?
I just went to the Ontario government website and searched, for example, if I want to teach them social studies, I look up the Ontario social studies curriculum for grade 1, and it gives information on what they should be learning, what level their grade 1 is learning at. And so then I would look up what type of social studies activities I could be teaching at home. So relationships, being able to connect relationships in a social studies context is how I would be teaching that to them. And then, going on the internet, printing out different types of exercises, and then also making sure that my son grasps the concept of it. I know with my other kids, it's a little bit more advanced because they're not in grade 1, but they also get the benefit of learning and kind of grasping it, I guess. It's not just my oldest son that I'm focused on. I'm tailoring the work to the different age group, basically. So my oldest would get the harder work. So I'll give the example of writing. I would get him to read a story, and then I would write probing questions about the story and say, okay, well, can you give me a little bit more examples about the characters? And that allows him to build up his writing skills. Mm-hmm. Whereas with my daughter, she's in junior kindergarten, so she doesn't have that writing skills there yet. So I get her to practice writing her letters and figuring out how to practice her writing skills better. And my 3-year-old, he's in preschool, so he's obviously not as interested in the writing. So I get him to do a little bit of coloring, but make sure that he feels that he's participating and engaged. And then I do different activities with him, such as learning his numbers, his alphabets, his colors, the basic things that they would know before they go into junior kindergarten, which he will be in September. So all of this interruption really has stopped the learning that he was doing at the daycare where I had him. So I've now taken it upon myself to make sure that he is ready. Should school start back in September, he will not have any kind of disadvantage.
Right. So what does a day look like for them? Have you kind of incorporated the same routine, the same kind of structure that they would experience in a classroom in school?
Yes, they wake up at 7:30. They get themselves dressed, brush their teeth, do their normal routine, come downstairs, have their milk, have their breakfast, and then instead of going out the door to go to school, they go down into the basement and they sit, and school starts at 9:00. So they wait for me to ring a little bell that I have. And they
you have a bell.
Confused. Yes, I do. They were a little bit confused when we started doing this on Monday. They said, "Mom, what do we call you when we're at school?" I said, "Call me Ms. Lozano." So they've been calling me Ms. Lozano during.
Why, you're hardcore, Hema.
And, my youngest, he still calls me Mom, but my oldest too, they think it's so funny. They call me Ms. Lozano. And so, yes, it's the same normal routine. I've actually built a schedule from 9:00 to 9:45. They do reading. Then they have some like either snacks or free time, I try to incorporate a somewhat similar schedule that they would adhere to at school.
So how are they adjusting to all of this? You've already mentioned they're a little bit confused about titles, mom, teacher, demarcations. How have they been adapting? Do you feel like this routine has helped them deal with the current situation better?
My oldest, he kind of understands what's going on. He knows that we can't go out because, of this virus that's out there that could potentially make people sick. But for my other two school-age children, they're not really as upset by it. I think they all miss their friends and going out and being able to go to school and go to the playground and things like that. But they don't really fully understand why we have to stay at home. So I've been trying to explain it to them. But in terms of disruption or that they're upset because they can't go, they're a little bit upset, but they're not extremely upset because they have each other to play with. But I can only imagine for parents who have one child or two children and they have to do both the homeschooling as well as try to entertain their kids or make sure that they're getting their education. It must be very, very difficult. But my kids don't seem to be very affected by it at this moment.
You mentioned other parents, Hema, who might be struggling with this or trying to cope. And you mentioned using online resources that helped you. Could you share a little bit more about that? Did social media or something from the digital stratosphere particularly stand out to you in terms of resources for what parents can do?
So, for example, when I have a topic in mind, so if I know that the subject that I want to teach today, the more important subject that I want to teach today is reading, I formulate a plan in my head. And I say, okay, well, today I want to teach reading and I want my son to be able to understand what's going on in that story. I will go and I will search something age appropriate on the internet for him, like Balloon in the Tree that I was reading to them yesterday. And then I will ask him questions that he will be able to sit there and give me responses based on the story so that I know that he's grasped the concept of that. The way that I go about teaching them is I formulate a plan in my head of what I want to teach them, what I want them to understand from that lesson. And I kind of go about it that way, either researching the story on the internet and getting the information from there, just Googling it, or when I'm giving him math questions. I'm not very good at making up my own math questions. So I will go on Google and I will look to see if they're like Prodigy. It's a game math website. I will get him to do the math questions, but it's a game for him. So he's learning math, but he's also having fun while doing it. I also don't want them to feel like being at home and me homeschooling them is very rigid and boring or something that they don't want to look forward to, because they've already had so much things taken away from them by them not being able to go to school. They don't have the social interaction with their friends. They don't have the interaction with their teacher. So I don't want to scar them by not making learning fun for them. I kind of mix it up in my lesson plan on how I do things with them. I give them something that's a little bit more serious so that they do their lesson, but then also I give them something fun. And that's why I break out the lessons in about 45-minute chunks. So that way they know that they have a short period of time, but then they also get a break right after.
So this must be probably much harder for parents who are trying to remotely work from home and some who might actually be single parents.
Yes, I can only imagine how difficult it must be. I do know some friends who are single parents and they have more than one children at home and trying to be mom, trying to teach them, trying to do their work at the same time is very difficult. I'll share this with you. I had seen on social media this posting that said, all you parents who think that you could do a better job than teachers, now's your time to shine. And I kind of laughed at the post because it's not like you can stop the role of being a mom and then suddenly be a teacher when you're at home. Homeschooling is, especially in this situation where it was kind of thrusted on because of the environment that we're in right now. It's not like you focus only on teaching as you would in a school environment. You're having to be a teacher. You're having to be mom. You're having to be the one who breaks up the sibling fighting. You're having to do the laundry. You're having to do all these multiple things at the same time, or rather in the same day. So to me, when I read that post, I started laughing because I don't think it's comparing apples to apples. It's more like apples to oranges.
I hear that your teaching or momming skills are needed in the background there. I have just one last question for you. If the situation continues, do these kids get a summer vacation?
They do. Yes, because mommy will need a summer vacation too. I will be keeping to the school schedule for once. Maybe it might even end sooner. Maybe instead of the end of June, maybe it might be at the beginning or mid-June.
Early summer vacations. All right. Well, thank you so much, Hema, and good luck with your parenting and now your additional teaching duties.
Thank you so much. And thank you for taking up my story.
Just a reminder to listeners, there is no right way to be a perfect quarantine parent right now. That's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. This Matters is hosted and produced by me, Saba Eitizaz, Adrian Chung, and Raju Mutter. Produced and mixed by Sean Pattenden, and our director of programming is JP Fozo. Our show theme music is by So-Called, and our episode music is by Mike DeAngelis. We want to hear what stories matter to you. Please send us comments, questions, or ideas to thismatters@thestar.ca. Please consider supporting the journalism the Toronto Star newsroom does at thestar.com. And don't forget to subscribe to This Matters on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Let's talk soon.